use cases of Web3 through DePIN.
This episode is brought to you by StoreX, the DePIN leader in decentralized cloud storage, where your data lives across a network and not in big tech silos. Hello everyone, Daniel from DePIN Hub here. Today we're interviewing Amira, head of DePIN at the Solana Foundation. Currently, Solana is the gravitational force when it comes to home of DePINs, with most attention going towards it. Thank you for joining the podcast. Excited to talk to you about the role of the foundation, what everything that Solana is doing, all the crazy things. I am a big Solana fan, so it's a pleasure to have you here. We've met before, it was in Hong Kong and other places. Excited for you also to be at the Solana Foundation. I think you bring a lot of potential to the blockchain. And yeah, let's get started by you introduce yourself, your role at the foundation, and what excites you about blockchain and DePINs.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me. I have been a fan of the podcast for multiple years now, so it kind of feels like a coming home to roost or full circle moment. I'm the head of DePIN at the Solana Foundation. I've been in Solana Foundation for almost 3.5 years now. I sort of think of myself as the Forrest Gump of Solana. I've done a lot of different things in the space. I was our very first head of policy. I built up our policy team, our presence in DC and a little bit around the world as well. Really figuring out how do we educate policymakers on why crypto is useful. We spent a lot of time working on strategy at the foundation, did everything from thinking about how we talk about important elements of the network like decentralization, like network resilience. Spent some time working on program for founders, ran a little mini accelerator within the foundation. But DePIN has always been my first love in crypto. I think it's such an amazing innovation and an opportunity to be able to do things that I think people have been dreaming of for a long time in business with the technology that we have today. So I've been our head of DePIN for about 6 months. I've also joined the board of the Helium Foundation about a year ago. So I've been deep in worlds for a little bit as a fangirl, but now sort of deep as someone who's helping support the ecosystem.
How did you get into blockchain as well, right? Because I think you were like into political science or work at the White House, and how does that evolve into the blockchain? And how do you see blockchain and the government working together right now?
So many good questions there. So I have always been interested in a few things. Impact has really driven my career. I'm a missions-driven person, and I am really excited about the idea of people-powered communities. And that has sort of fueled everything I do, and it's sort of the thread that brings it together. So I did spend the start of my career in government. I worked at the White House and the State Department in the Obama administration. And I think people sort of at the time thought about the Obama movement as very people-powered. It was about figuring out how we bring change to government. And it was an incredibly exciting time. I was 23 years old and had like an office in the basement of the West Wing. And so saw a lot of history go down, and it was an incredibly exciting place to be. But I grew up in the Bay Area. I'd always had like a startup-y itch. And so I left and I sort of got into startup world, and I iterated a lot on ideas for companies that really put the power back in the hands of users. And I'd say in Web 2.0 world, what we talked about a lot was democratization of technology, right? And the internet. So I started a company that made it easier for people to order home cooked food from people in their neighborhood. Then I sort of worked in the creator economy ecosystem. I was we bonded over this. Like I was a podcast creator myself. And I started a company that helped podcasters earn premium revenue off their podcasts. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we can help build new business models for creators and how we can give them more ownership over their livelihoods, which was, as I think was all known in crypto, a big problem in Web 1.0 and 2.0 was helping give people control over their destiny, who actually fueled a lot of the content that came on the internet that we all enjoyed. The people creating it were not receiving those rewards. So, when we sold my last company, Glow, in 2021, I was taking some time just to sit back, look on the horizon, figure out what I should do next. And I'd been crypto curious in 2017 during that sort of last cycle. And I sort of put it away, sort of got distracted by, my Web 2 company. And I looked up again, and everyone was talking about how Web3 was revolutionizing opportunities for creators. And I said, I got to figure this stuff out. And, I wasn't looking for a job. I was maybe looking at starting something again or taking a little more time off. But I said, I gotta figure this stuff out, if only to be conversant at dinner parties, right? If only to figure out like how this industry that I've spent so much time in is changing. And so I set aside a crypto week And so, I did all the stuff that people do when they onboard, right? Like I got wallets, I joined all the Discord channels, I like started playing around with DEXs. And all of a sudden, Crypto Week became Crypto Month, became Crypto, 3 months. And I found myself at Breakpoint. That was the very first Breakpoint in 2021. And I was just blown away by the energy. And I met a lot of the folks that were sort of central to the Solana Foundation and then Solana Labs. And that sort of found itself into what was then a short-term contract. And that was 3.5 years ago. So it's been a while now.
That is super cool story. So you were here in Lisbon then in 2021, right? I think that was a big one.
That was the first Breakpoint. Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, that time was crazy. We were like crazy deploying Helium hotspots all over the country. We're building Hotspotty, the fleet management that now it's like a legacy product before DePIN Hub. It was such an exciting time. I remember I already got hooked in Solana way before that. I think it was around the beginning of 2021. Like such a cool ecosystem. I think that's what differentiates a lot of from different blockchain projects that I see out there is just the vibe, the excitement. Everybody's about it, like building technology, building cool things. And that's something that really showed during 2021. And then I've been to all the breakpoints ever since, right? In Amsterdam and like in Singapore and everything. It was such a cool blockchain to be part of. But then for you, what was if you had one, kind of like an aha moment when it comes to like DePIN, understand what DePIN was all about, and why do you think that Solana is a great blockchain for that as well?
It's a great question. I don't know if I ever had a hot DePIN moment, which is maybe not the best answer. I need a better one, but I think for me, I've always what I'll say is what drew me to blockchain was the idea of communally owned networks, right? Like I think we live in a society where if you look at sort of the way that the economy's played out, a lot of the wealth gap is due to some people owning assets that generate returns and a lot of people not. And the wealth gap has grown over time almost entirely due to that reason, right? Accrual of assets to people of ownership versus those do not. And so, one way that you can tackle that problem is by making sure that you bring more people into the ownership economy. And I love the idea of communally owned assets, right? That sort of break the traditional system of what is centrally owned and make it possible for everyone who's contributing to get a piece of it. And what I saw in DePIN was that, a really direct model of that, right? We're taking these big, monopolistically controlled infrastructure products, and we're figuring out how to make them communally owned. And that was true when I first saw it in the classic examples, Helium, Hive Mapper, and it's true of what I see of DePIN projects, and it's why I'm really drawn to it. I think of crypto as a Rorschach test for people's views on the world and honestly their politics. And for me, the idea of communal ownership that gives more people a piece of the pie is what sucked me into the industry. And I'm really excited. That's what I get to work on now.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, because what I was saying, like for me, for example, I've been in crypto for, I don't know, since I think, if I can remember correctly, 2011. And it was just because of Helium that I had this aha moment. I've been through a lot of cycles. Like I wasn't, fully crypto degen. I just kind of like understand the technology, trying to follow everything that's happening since very, very early on. But then it was because of Helium that I decided, okay, I really understand this. I have this light bulb moment, and okay, we're disrupting the way that people build infrastructure. This is super cool. I want to be involved. I went all in. Me and Max, my co-founder, we dropped our jobs. We started this company kind of like without much planning, just let's go. And we're still here, right? Since 2020, just building and trying to help this ecosystem. And yeah, DePIN it's freaking amazing. And yeah, the second question, like why then Solana?
This one really jazzes me up. I think the pitch for Solana is you come for the technology and you stay for the ecosystem. So DePIN, you don't just need a blockchain to be able to make it work. You need a really high performance blockchain, because if you think about what DePINs are doing, they're rewarding the contributors at a micro rate. So you want to be able to solve for being able to provide both very large and very small rewards to contributors, calibrated based on their contributions. You want to be able to do it at a quick rate, and you want to be able to do it really cheaply. So you need a high performance blockchain to do that. And Solana is table stakes, really cheap, really fast, really energy efficient. It is a great way to be able to transmit those rewards. And that is a golden use case for Solana. But then on top of that, you have all these other perks that I think make it takes Solana from making a project technologically viable to commercially viable. And what is that? You have this rabid community of early adopters, right? So the Solana community is one of the most powerful that I've ever met, not just in crypto, in general. People are excited to be a part of it. They want to be a part of the movement, and they're willing to take on risk and be early adopters. That's what you want. So that's the community of people who are just, gonna buy your nodes, gonna become contributors, whatever it is. Then you have a really powerful community of founders and developers. And now you've gotten to the point where these are the best in the world, right? The best DePIN founders in the world are on Solana. Now, the way that you should think about this is in the 2010s, if you wanted to build a tech company, a tech startup, you could do it from anywhere in the world, but you were at a serious advantage if you moved to Silicon Valley, right? Because you're surrounded by the people who were the best in the world at it. They'd unlocked how to do it. They're talking to each other. They're figuring out how to help each other. Solana is that for DePIN, right? This is the place where you go to the people who have done it, who've unlocked the code, who are constantly trading notes on the best way to do it. You get that on Solana. So think about that as the ecosystem for where you want to build your product. And it's not just the founders, it's also the developers, right? The people who are sort of figuring out how to create these ecosystems as quickly as possible. And those two things beget a lot of liquidity, right? So you have people who are excited about investing in this ecosystem and are there to help power your project. And so if you're a DePIN founder, if you're doing enough hard things, don't work against the community. Find a community that's the tidal wave for you to keep growing the market and make sure that you can be as good as possible in growing in that community.
StoreX Network's pioneering DePIN for cloud storage, a permissionless, censorship-resilient alternative to traditional platforms like AWS and Google Cloud. As a DePIN project, StoreX turns unused global storage capacity into powerful decentralized networks where users can upload encrypted files and have them stored across independent nodes, not centralized servers. It's a Web3 native cloud infrastructure powered by the XDC network, where anyone can become a node operator, earn tokens, and contribute to building a more open internet. StoreX empowers startups, enterprise developers, and privacy advocates with resilient, scalable, and low-cost data storage, built for the decentralized future. Join the DePIN revolution, back your data with StoreX. Yeah, I love how Solana makes it super easy to onboard new people as well, right? You have Phantom Wallet, it's super user-friendly, you have a few other wallets, but it's so fluid, it's so easy. And I think that's something that I really like. And when I see that projects actually are built on Solana, that gives also a little bit of confidence, right, on what they're trying to do, because you know that the blockchain side of things is going to work most likely, and it's going to be. I already have the wallet. I already know how it works. I don't need to go to some weird chain, because like whenever I see some projects like building their own blockchain, I was like, that's why, Singapore last year we went to Thailand for a week during the Island DAO, and there was like this massive mansion that was like the owner was like Solana, like hooked, I guess, right? And it's such a cool ecosystem. Everybody's building, everybody's focused. There's a lot of cool energy going on, and I think you guys are basically leading the way on how to build a blockchain and how to build community. Do you know anything? How was the flow? How did Solana start becoming, let's build hackathons, let's hold these events, have the super teams. What was the idea behind having all this great ecosystem, and how well is it happening for you guys now?
It's a great question. I think one of the early convictions of Raj and Toli and a lot of the Solana ecosystem is, so you can build the best technology that you want, but it's meaningless if no one uses it, right? So developer relations and onboarding a community was really critical early on. And there's a lot of testing about what is the best way to build a community. And I think we soon figured out it's not top down. Like, you really need to go bottom up, and you need to get people hooked. You need to get them excited about what you're doing. You need to go on the ground and show people a good time. It's not enough just to organize online. You have to figure out how to reach them where they're at, make onboarding as easy as possible. And you need to just constantly be out there giving people the room to iterate and build communities and figure out how to take ownership over things. So one of the early tenets of the Solana ecosystem and what came out of Solana Foundation and Solana Labs at the time was, we will build it, we'll create the template, but the minute that the community is ready to take it on, we want the community to take it on, because a blockchain, if it's truly decentralized, it can't all be coming from a couple of organizations. You need the community to run with it. And so that's what you've seen. Some of the most robust communities in blockchain and the most robust sort of growth channels are all community driven. So the hackathon is now run by Coliseum. It came from Maddie, who used to be at the Solana Foundation for a while, and sort of hatched the idea of Coliseum and figured out, one of the best ways to be able to acquire new developers is via hackathons, but it's spun out, right? It's now a community sustained event. Maddie runs that completely independently with a couple of partners of his, and they're the folks that drive it forward. And if someone else wants to go run another Solana hackathon, which they do all the time, they are so welcome to do it. We would love for them to do that. So I think that's what it is. It's one, a recognition that community and the developer ecosystem is critical, that technology alone is not worth it or is not enough. And the second is that we see our job at the foundation is only going so far, right? We create a template and we want the community to be able to pick it up and run with it and take ownership of it, because this isn't, our blockchain to run. It truly is the world's blockchain. And if that's true, then you need a lot of people to be able to use it, find value in it, and build on it.
Yeah, I think because if you have to control everything, it would be really impossible to the level that things are happening right now, right? I see the Coliseum, there's one actually happening right now here in Lisbon. There's others all around the world, and then you have the super teams. They have so many cool things happening. And it's really cool to see just the excitement and everything that they're building, so many companies and people building at the same time. If you're a founder out there with an idea, you're starting to build something on Solana, how can the Solana Foundation help these projects fulfill their dreams?
So the Solana Foundation fulfills a really specific need in the ecosystem, and we stay pretty true to it, which is we want to be able to do what no one else in the ecosystem can do. So we are not a replacement for venture capital. We are not here to make or break projects. We're not picking winners. We're here, if you have a specific ask and you're looking for something to push your project forward, we can help you do that. So what we can do, we can connect you to other folks in the ecosystem. That's teams that you might be able to work with if you're looking to connect with, say, a wallet. It's other DePIN ecosystem founders to be able to learn from them. So that's one piece, is connectivity. And then it's events, right? To help you sort of get energized, understand what other people are doing, plug into this amazing ecosystem. So that is one aspect of it. It's just super connectors. That's what we're here for, is to help you get to know the ecosystem. A second is technical unblocking. So, we try at the foundation to try to make developer docs as legible as possible, to make it easy to onboard, to get you to your hello world moment as quickly as possible. But it's a very dynamic ecosystem. A lot's changing all the time. And sometimes you just run into issues. So what can we do there? Well, if you ask us a question and it's a pretty easy fix, we can ask, DevRel to be able to help unblock you, help you navigate that problem. If it's an issue that we see people face over and over again, that's when, some of the product teams will come in place and create basically a reference implementation that you can use to be able to move forward. So you might have heard of token extensions. Token extensions are basically a list of libraries that can help teams build in a more compliant way for blockchain. Why? Because we heard tons and tons of teams think about how they wanted to build for a world where blockchain was emerged, but also compliance was important. And so we built sort of a library of standards in concert with other folks in the ecosystem to put out there to make it easy to do things like confidential balances, like token whitelisting, so you can only maybe transfer from KYC addresses and so forth. Those are libraries that aren't just good for one team, they're good for a bunch of teams. So we can help with that. And then the third thing is really strong excitement and vibes and helping you see sort of where the puck is going in the ecosystem, right? So we have a sense of what's happening in the space. And we have sort of a pulse on what other teams are out there and what they're doing. And if you come to us with an idea or you're trying to figure out where you want to go, we can help tell you there's 3 teams building that in the space, but we feel that there's a hole for X, Y, and Z. Or, you know what, that lane is wide open. We want you to help build there. And we will help provide a grant for you to build a reference implementation that lots of teams can use in that regard. So it's helping figure out where the gaps in the ecosystem is and help filling those. Those are sort of our key roles of the ecosystem.
It's already a lot, right? I think it's a massive help as well for people who want to get started. One thing that I would like to touch here in the podcast is actually the date that this podcast is going live is you have an event in New York. And I would like to talk a little bit about the differences between all the events that you at the Solana Foundation organize. There's the Breakpoint that's going to be in Abu Dhabi, I think, this year, right? Instead of Singapore. And then you have the Connect that's happening right now in New York. Can you talk about a bit the differences between all those events?
For sure. So to date, the Solana Foundation had hosted maybe one giant event a year, a giant conference, which was Breakpoint, and then a few other sort of events along the way around the world that were aimed at bringing sort of developers and founders and builders together and community members together in separate spaces. This year, we have two major events running. One is Solana Accelerate, which is happening in New York next week, or this week, I think the day that this episode drops. So if you're in New York, definitely come by. And the other is Breakpoint, which is going to happen in December in Abu Dhabi. Breakpoint is really a showcase of everything happening in the Solana ecosystem. So it's an incredible place if you're Solana specific or you just want to know what's going on in the ecosystem to hear the latest, right? Tons of announcements, tons of getting into the nitty gritty of what different ecosystem teams are doing, and really getting to know sort of the Solana ecosystem in its own right. It also, because it's in Abu Dhabi and it's never actually taken place in the US, it's much more focused on non-US teams or sort of the rest of the world. And so you'll get huge draw from places like Asia, obviously this year the Middle East, Europe, and so forth in the continent of Africa. Accelerate, it's the first time we're doing this. And the idea of Accelerate is to recognize that we are in the middle of a new beginning for blockchain. And we really want to see the United States be the heart of innovation in crypto and innovation more broadly. So Accelerate is an opportunity to put a stake in the ground and really discuss the future of crypto through an American specific lens. And that is the future when it comes to policy, when it comes to finance, when it comes to technology, and how these three things accelerate. So it's really about a discussion for what the world looks like 1, 5, 10 years down the line with blockchain and its underpinnings to talk about what's going on to help build towards that future with an American lens and a Solana specific lens. So it's not a Solana exclusive event. This is really aimed at anyone who wants to understand what is going on with the future of crypto. And to prove that point, we have people coming in from all over the gamut, a lot of huge names in Web 2, a lot of huge investors and institutional folks. We have multiple senators and members of Congress coming. So it's a broad conference aimed at getting sort of the biggest names in the space to come talk about what they see as the future and set that stage. So it'll be a really exciting time in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to ask you a question. Why do you think about DePIN when it comes to lawmakers? It's I remember I had a podcast with the Blockchain Association from DC, and the way that they use actually DePIN ecosystem to explain blockchain for the government, because I mean right now at least the government's way more pro crypto, so that makes your life a bit easier. But it's always DePIN is always a good use case, right, for blockchain, that you're not talking about all the bad things that can also happen in blockchain. How do you see the DePIN leading the way of like allowing governments to really accept blockchain?
DePIN plays a massive role in helping lawmakers understand the use cases of blockchain, because if you think about most use cases of blockchain that government hears, it really has to deal with exchanges, right? They are in the news, and also when it comes to pure sort of political power in DC, it's being dominated by exchanges, mostly centralized exchanges. What DePIN does is it helps them see, like, wait a second, like there's this whole thing that is being created, which are these communally owned infrastructure networks. They're using blockchain. Like, I'm not quite sure why they use blockchain, but that sounds pretty interesting to me. And they're doing a lot of things that I like. They're breaking big tech. They're giving more people ownership opportunities in the world. They're helping cover rural areas or underserved areas. That sounds interesting to me. Like, how do you do that? And so it's quite disarming. So, I went to DC with a few DePIN founders about 6 weeks ago. And we walk in with, like folks from HiveMapper and GeoNet and Demo. And, we get these members of Congress in the room and we have them talk about what they do. And you can kind of tell that these members of Congress feel like a little disarmed. Like they move from sort of attack mode or a place where they have serious opinions. It's not necessarily attack mode, where they just move to a place of curiosity. And that's what makes it really fun to be able to discuss DePIN, is I think most people have never heard of DePIN before. It's actually one of the biggest issues I face leading DePIN at the Solana Foundation, is how do we do DePIN education? Because when you tell people about what's happening, they're like, whoa, that's really cool. And if you can go into a meeting with anyone, especially someone who's skeptical, and instead of having them go like, grr, I don't like you, and have them go, huh, that is a great entry point into a friendly conversation about the future of any industry. And so it's a lot of fun. And it's a wedge in the door in Washington, especially among lawmakers who tend to be more crypto skeptical.
Yeah, that's super exciting, right? Because like they go from like, oh, Bitcoin, like money laundry, all those bad things, and then like, oh, have you tried to explain a HiveMapper? And the person like goes, huh, that's super exciting. they a lot of times they don't know that there's so many more things outside of just moving funds around, right? So that's I use Hive Mapper a lot as an example because it's super easy to understand what the project is doing, and people immediately like, that's actually quite interesting, and then they get curious, and then just go to deepinhub.io and then you can check. There's hundreds of projects doing similar things in different ways. And we get a lot of new people into Web3 because of that curiosity. And then I wait for them to actually make some extra passive income, like all the good things you say. If there was one law right now, if you expect the government to change for the better, is there anything like that is a major blocker right now, do you think?
I think the way that I would address this is really just by pushing for regulatory clarity, which is what people have been talking about for years. Yeah, and I think this really has to come from legislation. If we're talking about the U.S., this is a U.S. specific point of view. I think a lot of people say the administration is more crypto friendly today. We can use guidance from the SEC to be able to guide what we're doing forward. Let's rest on that. We don't need to worry about legislation. Legislation is complicated. The reality is administrations come and go. Stances on crypto come and go. President Trump was much more crypto skeptical, just 5 years ago, last time he was in office. And you really need legislation, which is steady throughout administrations, to be able to instantiate some laws and standards so that people know what to expect as they build businesses. And I think that's really critical to help make it so that builders know what to expect. I think it's really critical as an American. I'm very passionate about the idea of America being at the forefront of the future of innovation. And I think you need people to have that certainty to continue to build here. And I think for DePIN builders in particular, they're left in a situation where there is quite a bit of uncertainty about what they're building because of the reasons I said. Most of the conversation, the vast majority of the conversation among lawmakers has to do with basically exchanges and maybe to a certain extent stablecoins. DePIN might be 1% of what they hear about. And it's a pretty different use case, right? So I think as a DePIN creator, what you really want is legislation that is clear and that actually makes it clear where you stand as a DePIN project so you know what to expect. And that's what I'd ask for. I wouldn't make any particular ask about sort of the nature of how that clarification happens. Obviously, I want it to be favorable to make sure that DePIN can continue to survive and thrive in this country and around the world. But really, I think what I'd ask for is that kind of certainty and specific call out for DePIN projects and helping them advance what they're doing so that builders have certainty.
I think like a next follow-up questions around this topic. In 5 years from now, how would you expect the crypto ecosystem to be thriving with like from the government, from the builder side? How do you see that in the next 5 years?
I think DePIN will be a household term in the next 5 years. I think people will use it the same way that they use the term Bitcoin, except that, it'll be sort of universally positive. I think DePIN will be a multi-$100 billion, if not trillion-dollar industry in the next 5 years. And the reason I think that is if you look at every sort of major monopolistic infrastructure business that requires high capex, DePIN is coming right at them and expanding the TAM, right? So that's one subsegment where you're just going to see a ton of growth because think about the market capture that Google Maps has, that other precision mapping systems have, that Telco has. Like DePIN is really providing a competitive threat to that and is stealing that share and growing it. And all those are megatrends, right? They're all growing industries into itself. And DePIN is providing an incredible plugin to a component of AI that we don't talk about, which is physical AI, right? So most of how you and I interact with AI today has to do with the LLMs that we interact with, like Perplexity or ChatGPT. It's all scraping data from the internet that we see in the World Wide Web. What we don't have is a ton of data that comes from our physical world. Things about the streets that surround us, the sky, where planes are, the oceans even, right? And DePIN is a very unique entry point into being able to get a lot of that data very quickly, very cheaply, and safely, and in a way that is constantly refreshed. And so that industry of physical AI, which is going to take off over the next 5 or 10 years because of the rise of self-driving cars, because of the increase of drones, because of more satellites in our orbit, those things are all going to be fueled by the data that comes from DePINs deployed in the world, gathering this sort of like physical data that inform those AIs. And that's a completely new industry that will be a massive component of what AI looks like. So that is my crystal ball. DePIN will be huge. Everyone will know what it is. And you will be shocked at how much we interact with it in our daily lives.
I really like this idea of like, for example, there's so many projects, OpenAI, say Perplexity, they scrape the internet, but to scrape the real world is much more complicated. And I can think
I
about
like
so
that.
many,
Scrape the real world. That's right. DePIN,
right?
scraping the real world.
Exactly. I'm gonna like start using this because it's quite interesting because you have projects like Silencio, like scraping sound. Then you have like Wingbaits, GeoNet. You have Rover that's like using lidar to scan the roads. Hive Mapper to take picture of them. And so many projects actually trying to understand the world around you. If you put everything together, you can train AI to understand the world much better, right? So I think it's quite exciting. I really, really like this. One thing that if you'd like to tell the listeners about the Solana Foundation, about you, about what you guys are building, where they should go to learn more about the Solana ecosystem, and start building on Solana.
All right. So 3 things. One, if you're in New York, I beg you, come out to Accelerate, find your way to a side event, just come to Pier 36, whatever it is. It is an incredible conference. And I think if you know anything about the Solana ecosystem, anyone who's ever interacted with it through an event has come away just completely in awe. So if you come to Accelerate, come to Accelerate. If not, just go search Solana events. There's an entire events page. There's events globally happening all the time. There's a major one happening in Southeast Asia at the beginning of June. I know we're doing Apex Budapest at the end of June. I mean, tons of them. Come to an event, see the community, because you cannot underestimate how powerful it is until you see it in action. That's thing one. Thing two, if you're building in DePIN, I want to see you build on Solana. So hit me up. You can find me on Twitter or sort of wherever else. Like just go to solana.com/DePIN. I want to help you build. And the third thing is my call out is actually for people who are curious about DePIN, but have never spent time in crypto or Web3 before. I think most of the growth in DePIN is going to come from people who are not degens. I think it's going to be people who have a strong hardware background. Maybe they've been founders before. They know the industry that they're coming from exceptionally well. Maybe it's energy, maybe it's oceans, maybe it's maps. And they see that they have an opportunity to be able to build a different kind of business here that never used to be possible before. And so if you either have that background and are curious, like please keep digging. Again, reach out to me. Or a call to action for all your listeners who may have been in the space for a while. If you have an idea of where we should be as a DePIN community, a conference, a regular dinner that happens, a place where we can meet these just really talented hardware founders that are looking to figure out how to scale their business, reach out to me, because that's where I want to go and where I want to spend my time. Is I want to find people who are not necessarily Web3 natives, but people who are hardware natives, and help them understand the opportunity in DePIN.
Only possible on Solana. #.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining the podcast. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. And I hope to see you somewhere around the world in the next Solana conference like we did a few months ago. I also like to invite everyone listening to go to deepinhub.io, check for the projects. You can have a filter for all the projects building on Solana. You can see there's hundreds of projects, and I think there's so many more that is still very early stage. So Solana is definitely a very exciting ecosystem to be around, and make sure to follow everything they're doing, because I'm a big Solana fanboy, so I can't say highly enough, but really excited for having you on the podcast and looking forward for our next conversation.
Me too. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.